Next on the 5 o'clock report.
All sides want to negotiate.
14 ayes, 13 nays.
Go wild is not on the list.
I hope he goes wild.
This is not an easy problem to solve. I have no guarantees that the peace is going to hold.
It was grace for a reason.
Now, let's go to the newsroom.
A test of wills. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Webster. 2 tariffs paused, but a third not. While the U.S. reached a temporary tariff truce with Mexico and Canada, mutual tariffs now in effect between America and China. CBS's Nancy Cordes on Beijing's retaliatory tariffs.
A 15% tariff on coal and liquefied natural gas products, as well as a 10% tariff on crude oil, agricultural machinery, and large engine cars imported from the U.S.
Asian analyst Gordon Chang says China has to play this game of economic chicken carefully.
Beijing is now extraordinarily reliant on the American market and therefore can't allow American consumers to turn away from Chinese goods.
Business leader Stephen Forbes is optimistic.
What you see here is all sides want to negotiate. The retaliatory tariffs are actually very mild. So I think the Chinese are signaling, yes, we have to respond because you put something on, but I think they're also signaling we're willing to sit down and discuss.
China also ordered an antitrust investigation into Google. Chinese fentanyl, it's part of the reason behind U.S. tariffs. The scourge of illegal fentanyl has touched every corner of America as the deadly drug flows into the country. That was the subject of a Senate hearing today on making fentanyl a Schedule I drug. California Sheriff and Coroner Don Barnes.
The fight against the fentanyl epidemic in California is incredibly challenging given our close proximity to the border, national drug trends, and our state's permissive drug laws.
Senator Chuck Grassley.
This is not an easy problem to solve, but there are certain parts of the problem that are simple to address.
A bipartisan group of senators last month unveiled a bill that would reclassify the synthetic opioid. Fentanyl is currently a Schedule II drug used in pain management in medical settings. Well, right along party lines.
Mr. Chairman, the final tally was 14 ayes, 13 nays.
With that, the Senate Finance Committee moved nominee Robert F. Kennedy Jr. one step closer to the position of Health and Human Services Secretary. Democrat Raphael Warnock on Donald Trump's earlier admonition to RFK Jr. to go wild at HHS.
Of all the things that I can think of that I'd like to see a Secretary of Health and Human Services do, go wild is not on the list.
Well, that drew this response from Republican Senator Tom Tillis.
I hope he goes wild and actually finds a way to reduce the cost of health care.
A Senate committee also moved Tulsi Gabbard's nomination for Director of National Intelligence forward this afternoon, and the full Senate confirmed former Congressman Doug Collins as head of the Department of Veterans Affairs. Collins is a Navy veteran, Air Force Reserve chaplain, and a former pastor. A noon deadline today for the FBI to turn in information to the Justice Department related to employees who worked on Capitol riot cases. Yesterday, thousands of agents and employees were asked to fill out a survey that detailed their roles in the investigations into January 6 defendants.
It's raising fears there could be a major purge, gutting the agency of the experienced investigators who handle child exploitation cases, gun crimes, counterterrorism.
That's CBS's Scott McFarland. CNN reports the FBI did comply with that Justice Department deadline. Also on President Trump's agenda today, a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israeli-Hamas hostage deal's a priority topic.
I've seen people brutalized. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. No, I have no guarantees that the peace is going to hold.
Hamas's main backer, Iran, will also get plenty of discussion as it races to build a nuclear weapon. Netanyahu is the first foreign leader Trump has hosted at the White House since taking office. Also in Washington, day 6 of recovery efforts in the Potomac River after Wednesday's crash between a commuter jet and an Army helicopter.
Emerging from the water on Monday, the plane's right engine, fuselage, and right wing. Divers also recovered additional remains of victims who died in last week's mid-air collision with that Army helicopter.
Since the crash, helicopters have been all but banned from the area.
Everything adds risk to aviation. Taking a layer of risk out of it, taking the helicopters away, is a step in the right direction because it mitigates that risk.
Captain Jason Ambrosi, who's president of the Airline Pilots Association. Now, dozens of families are still coming to grips with the loss of loved ones in that disaster, including Cedarville University student Grace Maxwell. Cedarville President Thomas White at a Friday assembly.
Even in the midst of our grief, we stop and we say, her name was Grace.
and it was grace for a reason.
Maxwell was a junior engineering student and soon to take part in a missions trip to London. Security super tight in New Orleans ahead of this weekend's Super Bowl.
League officials said the safest place this weekend will be under the security umbrella around Caesars Superdome. The plan includes help from the Department of Homeland Security, which has dispatched nearly 500 FBI personnel to New Orleans to investigate and prevent threats. Concerns were heightened following a terror attack that killed 15 people on nearby Bourbon Street before the Sugar Bowl matchup between Georgia and Notre Dame on January 1st. I'm Michael Kastner.
And up, and away.
2, 1.
Blue Origin with a successful launch of a mission to test some lunar experiments at the edge of space. A 10-minute flight, no crew aboard. Still to come on the 5 o'clock report. Bracing for an ice storm, Josh Shapiro's Pennsylvania priorities, and hitting a home run for the gospel through sports ministry.
Partly cloudy skies away from the lakes, but in lake effect areas, mostly cloudy, still a few snow showers around. Anyone is fair game for a dusting. Could see a couple of inches of fluff close to Lake Ontario. Low temps in the teens. On Wednesday, a few lake flurries for some, otherwise limited sun, but clouds gather. High temps 20s. And then late Wednesday night into Thursday, some light snow, sleet, and freezing rain. Tapering to a couple of showers or some drizzle later Thursday with high temperatures mid-30s to the middle 40s.
Thank you, Kevin. Now checking the stories making news where you live across New York and Pennsylvania. Well, New York's southern tier and just about all of Pennsylvania are under winter weather advisories. South Central PA under an ice storm warning from 7 p.m. tomorrow to Thursday noon. WBRE meteorologist Logan Westrope in Scranton.
I do think this kind of holds on to a little bit more snow, especially the farther north and east you go. Central Pennsylvania, you'll probably be looking at more of a freezing rain situation along with some sleet.
And there could be a second round of freezing rain and snow by the weekend. We'll recap meteorologist Kevin Williams' forecast for you later in this newscast. Taking the wraps off of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's plans for PA's future.
Pennsylvania is on the rise.
Optimistic talk from the Democrat whose $51 billion state budget counts on revenue from legalized recreational marijuana.
Send to my desk a bill that legalizes adult-use cannabis, expunges the records of people who have been convicted for non-violent possession of small amounts of marijuana.
PA Family's Dan Barkowiak says Shapiro's pot plans are out of touch with many Pennsylvania families.
An increase in crime, it's just one of the many social costs that come with this bad policy of retail marijuana.
Shapiro says 5 states surrounding Pennsylvania have legalized marijuana, and 60% of their customers are from the Keystone State. Among Shapiro's other priorities, major investments in energy, healthcare, and school spending. This in the face of a projected $4.5 billion budget shortfall on the horizon. The national spotlight will be trained on far western New York this week as the trial begins for the man accused in the 2022 Chautauqua Institution knife attack that almost killed author Salman Rushdie. Hadi Matar set to go on trial in Mayville, New York, accused of attacking Rushdie as he began to deliver a lecture to a Chautauqua audience. In a jailhouse interview, Matar said he didn't think Rushdie was, quote, a very good person, accusing him of attacking Islam. Iran's religious leader called for the assassination of Rushdie back in 1989 after the publication of his novel, The Satanic Verses. A new Siena College poll shows sagging favor for New York Governor Kathy Hochul. 39% of New Yorkers weighing in view her work favorably, 47% not so much. What do some state residents make of it?
That sounds like we need a new governor, honestly. Sounds like we need somebody that they actually like, that can actually do something to help us.
That's typical. That's every politician nowadays in America, pretty much. Unless you're like a populist, you get elected off of everybody else failing. That's what everything happens.
The Siena poll did show support for several initiatives Hochul is backing in the next budget, including so-called free school meals, upping the child tax credit, and limiting cell phones in state classrooms. Well, up next, highlights from today's Hometown Heroes interview with Doug Reifenberg with the Western New York ministry Victory Sports, spreading the gospel by distributing sports gear to youths in need.
12 years ago, I launched our sports ministry program over at Eastern Hills Wesleyan Church, and we started running a floor hockey program through Upward. We ran flag football camps and leagues, and that just really opened my eyes to, number one, the power of sports to minister to kids. And also it opened my eyes a lot to the different levels of need that were out there. And so we had a lot of different families coming in and utilizing our programs, and some had the resources and had the equipment and many didn't. The gears started churning at that point. How could I help these kids and these families get the equipment that they needed in order to play the sports, where then they could receive that positive impact that comes from sports and the coaching and the mentoring that comes along with it? And how could I also turn that kind of into a ministry where we could also share the love of Jesus with people? And that's kind of the original concept of Victory Sports Global Outreach. We ended up launching officially in August of 2017.
I've had the privilege of doing some mission trips down to the Dominican Republic, where baseball is really big. And I saw firsthand, and no doubt you've seen it even more, the way that sports can be such a venue to greater things.
For sure. One of our missions is to help missionaries, to help churches that are going on missions trips. We've probably partnered with at least 12 different churches over the last few years. Some of our equipment has been sent to probably 18 different countries. It's funny, I coached youth sports and middle school and high school sports for years myself. And I always would talk to the parents and I let them know, like, there's certain things that are maybe going on in your kids' lives where they're never going to listen to you as a parent sometimes. But if a coach says something to them, their ears perk up and they listen to them. And so it might be something that a parent has been telling a kid for years, like, you got to eat your fruits and vegetables and your protein. And until a coach tells a kid to do it, it doesn't really sink in properly. And the same thing can be said about the gospel. Sometimes kids are raised in a church or raised in a home where mom and dad might be talking about Jesus and the gospel and church, but it never really sinks in. And then all of a sudden they see a professional athlete or a collegiate athlete praising God and giving God glory, or maybe it's one of their coaches that shares the love of Jesus to them, and it impacts them in a different way because they're going to listen to them as this role model. And that's where sports has become so powerful.
We've seen a lot of that lately, both in, say, pro football, especially the college football playoffs, win or lose. We had a lot of athletes out there who are putting Christ first.
For sure. I mean, Jaden Daniels has been a great example of that. I think God was definitely with him this year to take him as far as they did as a rookie quarterback. I think the Bills, there's plenty of believers. I mean, every NFL team, every college team has that group of believers. But even Ohio State, listen, I'm a Michigan guy, so this is hard for me to say. But Ohio State was honestly one of those colleges that was probably the most forward with their outreach. I mean, right when camp started and college started back in the fall, Ohio State did this big revival on campus. And a lot of their top athletes were there, and they had music and worship, and they praised Jesus. And they had tons of college athletes or college students come to accept Jesus through that.
Scripture tells us that the fields are ripe, and maybe that includes football fields and baseball fields.
It's definitely ripe. Kids are open to listening to coaches and fellow athletes and leaders on teams.
Doug Reifenberg. Listen for Hometown Heroes and all of our original features via podcast from Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, and at familylife.org. All right, your nightly market report is up next, brought to you by Faithward Advisors. Powered by tech stocks, Wall Street closed higher this afternoon. Investors largely shook off trade war fears thanks to a strong gain in Palantir. Shares jumped 22% to a new record high after the Denver-based software company posted strong fourth quarter results. When the closing bell chimed out, the Dow rose 134 points to 44,556. The S&P 500 added 43 points to 6037, and the Nasdaq climbed 262 points to 19,654. Faithward Advisors, a Christian financial planning firm helping faithful stewards do more. Details are available at faithwardadvisors.com. This is the 5 o'clock report on Family Life.
Did you know you can feel rich and it has nothing to do with money? I'm Rob West with a Faith and Finance Minute. That's because money can't bring you true contentment. The world is full of unhappy people who have more money than they'll ever spend. What I'm talking about is having an attitude of gratitude. Gratitude opens your eyes to the true riches in your life. Every day, thank God for your daily bread. Then ask, does my car start? Do I have running water, clothes to wear, a roof over my head? Thank God for those things and be grateful for what you have. Ask Him to reveal more ways that He provides for you. When your eyes are open to God's blessings, you'll understand that you have everything you need, and you'll feel richer than you ever imagined. Manage your finances wisely with the easy-to-use FaithFi app. Download FaithFi, Faith and Finance from your app store, or learn more at faithfi.com.
Thank you much. Coming up still on the 5 o'clock report, an anniversary for something over 3 billion of us use every day.
Facebook. I'm hooked on Facebook.
Cold night is coming up, and a tranquil, chilly day is ahead tomorrow. There'll even be a little sun. Overnight, we'll call for partly cloudy skies away from the lakes, but in lake effect areas, mostly cloudy, still a few snow showers around, low temps teens. Tomorrow, clouds, some sun, and a flurry for some, high temps 20s and low 30s. Mixed precipitation late tomorrow night and Thursday. The latest indications are this event will be fairly light in the amounts of precipitation. A more robust and juicier system is likely over the weekend ahead.
All right, we look forward to that, Kevin. Thank you very much. Finally at 5.
On Facebook.
It was February 4th, 2004, that Harvard student Mark Zuckerberg and 4 roommates fired up what was originally called Face Mash. Harvard banned that one. Then they called it The Facebook, originally intended just to let fellow students post photos, class schedules, and the like. But before the year was out, other schools had joined in, and it swelled to 1 million users. The next year, they dropped the. In 2006, they added the popular News Feed feature, and it surpassed MySpace to become the world's most popular social media platform. Facebook went public in 2012, then bought up Instagram, WhatsApp, and Oculus VR, eventually rebranding the whole schmear under the name Meta. Combined, they're nearly twice the size of the runner-up, Google's YouTube. And that's the world we live in for Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Mark Webster. Family Life News.